Today we will learn about polyatomic ions. Our question of the day is, what does the prefix poly mean? What could a polyatomic ion be? Let's think about the word polyatomic ions. Poly means many, atomic as in atoms, and ions meaning charged. So a polyatomic ion is a bundle of atoms that act as a single unit and carries of charge. So basically, they're ions made up of multiple atoms put together. You're not going to break it up or alter it at all. So far, we have been making binary compounds, or compounds with two elements. However, when polyatomic ions bond, you can have more than two atoms in a compound. These are called ternary compounds. This is how you get molecules like NaOH, which is sodium hydroxide, as well as others. In this case, our elements are sodium, Na, oxygen, O, and hydrogen, H. Just like we crisscrossed with binary compounds, we can crisscross with ternary as well. When you crisscross the charges on a polyatomic ion, you will need to make the charge all the way across the bundle. So, sometimes you will need to use parentheses to hold the bundle together. It can also keep your subscripts from looking like double digits. Let's try an example. Here we have calcium plus 2, and we have the permanganate anion, MnO4 minus 1. In this case, we're going to cross the charge for the 2 and the 1, and we get CaMnO4 2. Now, if we just leave it as it is, it's going to look like we have 42 oxygens and only one manganese. So instead, we put parentheses around the whole polyatomic ion, and the 2's going to apply to every element in the parentheses. So we have 1 calcium, 2 manganese, and 4 times 2, or 8 oxygens. Now, pause the video and try the show what you know problems. Now, let's try some practice. For each of these 10 problems, we're going to crisscross the charges to bond the ions. So, for number 1, calcium is plus 2 because it's in the second row of the periodic table. OH minus 1 is then crisscrossed with it to get CaOH2. Make sure you include your parentheses so the polyatomic ion stays together. Now let's look at number 2. We have NH4 with a positive 1 charge, and chlorine is in the 17th group, or the next to last column of the periodic table, so it has a minus 1 charge. When we crisscross this, we get NH4Cl. Notice here we only have one NH4, so we do not use parentheses. Now let's look at number 3. Sodium chlorate. Sodium is Na and has a plus 1 charge because it's in the first group, and chlorate is ClO3 minus 1. We get this from our chart of polyatomic ions. You will be given this on any exam. Now let's crisscross our charges and we get NaClO3. Number 4 is potassium permanganate. So potassium is K with a plus 1 charge, and permanganate is MnO4 with a minus 1 charge. When we crisscross, we are left with KMnO4. Now let's try number 5. Ni plus 2 plus NO3 minus 1. Well, when we crisscross the charges, we get NiNO3 2. Once again, make sure you have your parentheses around the NO3. For number 6, we have Ti plus 3 and PO4 minus 3. When we crisscross our charges, we get Ti3, PO4 3. However, these both have a 3 as their subscript, so we can reduce it to TiPO4.
Now let's consider number 7. Na is +1 because it's in the first group, and OH is -1. Let's crisscross our charges, and we get Na1, OH1, or NaOH. Number 8 looks at cesium, or Ce +1, and oxalate, which on our chart is C2O4 -2. We crisscross our charges to get Ce2, C2O4. Remember, if there's only one of your polyatomic, you do not need parentheses. Now looking at number 9, we have palladium +2 and hydroxide -1. If we crisscross our charges, we get PdOH2. Make sure you include your parentheses because there is more than one of your polyatomic. Lastly, let's look at rubidium, Rb +1, and perchlorate, ClO4 -1. When we crisscross our charges, we are then left with RbClO4, and there is no parentheses.
Now we're going to look at the names and use that to crisscross the bond to make the compounds. So in this case, we have nickel 3 dichromate. Nickel 3 is Ni+3. Dichromate is Cr2O7 -2. So let's crisscross them and we get Ni2 and then in parentheses Cr2O7, and there's 3 of those. For number 12, we have calcium and cyanide.
So Ca is +2.
Cn is -1. When we crisscross those, we get CaCN2. Now let's look at ammonium and chlorine. Ammonium is NH4+1. Chlorine is Cl -1. When we crisscross those, we get NH4Cl. Ammonium nitrate is ammonium is NH4+1, and then nitrate is NO3 -1. We're going to crisscross the charges on our polyatomics, and we get NH4NO3. Now for number 15, we have hydrogen peroxide. Hydrogen has a +1 charge, and peroxide is O2 with a -2 charge. So when we crisscross those, we get H2O2. For number 16, we have nickel 2, so nickel with a +2 charge, and phosphate, which is PO4 with a -3 charge. When we crisscross these, we get Ni3, and we get PO4 2. So we have 2 phosphates. Looking at number 17, we have potassium, K, has a +1 charge, and SO4 -2. When we crisscross it with potassium, we will get K2SO4. If we look at number 18, we have NH4+1 and C2O4 -2. We have 2 polyatomics, but we can still crisscross and we get NH4 2 C2O4. For number 19, we have SC, which has a +3 charge, and PO4, which has a -3 charge. When we crisscross these,
We get SC3PO4 3, which then reduces down to SCPO4.
finally, let's do number 20, where we have magnesium sulfate. Magnesium being Mg+2, sulfate being SO4 -2. When we crisscross this, we get Mg2, SO4 2, and we reduce or simplify it down to MgSO4.